The Galactic Concord Council chamber hung in the cold silence of deep space, its curved walls shimmering with soft blue light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Around the circular table sat representatives from 17 starfaring species, each encased in their own environmental suits or hovering in personal force fields. Their eyes, compound or single, organic or mechanical, all turned toward the empty chair at the far end, the human delegation's seat. It had been vacant for 3 days. Daniel Carter stood just outside the main entrance, arms folded, watching through the transparent alloy door. He wore a plain gray uniform with no insignia, no medals, nothing to suggest he was Earth's senior envoy to the Concord. Beside him, Lisa Monroe adjusted the collar of her jacket, her dark eyes scanning the chamber with quiet intensity. She didn't speak. Neither did he. They had long since stopped expecting fairness from this council. Inside, Councillor Kyle Vore of the Zentari rose from his seat. His voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, rolled out like thunder across stone. "The evidence is overwhelming," he declared, his four-fingered hands pressing flat against the table. "Humanity's volatility threatens the stability we have built over millennia. Their wars, their rapid technological surges, their emotional unpredictability. It cannot be contained within our shared systems." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Varel delegate nodded slowly, their feathered head bobbing. The Qatari, gelatinous and translucent, rippled in consensus. Even the usually neutral Orlan ambassador gave a slight tilt of their crystalline head. No one mentioned the human-built relay stations that kept interstellar comms stable. No one spoke of the medical drones designed by human bioengineers that had saved millions during the Xylos plague. No one recalled how human negotiators had brokered peace between the warring Thalax and Marine just 2 cycles ago. All that mattered now was fear and the need to place blame somewhere. The vote was called. 17 hands rose, 17 votes in favor, unanimous. Humanity was to be expelled from all Concord territories within 30 standard days. Their ships were to withdraw, their colonies dismantled, their access codes revoked. They were to vanish as if they had never been part of the galactic community at all. Daniel didn't flinch when the verdict was announced over the comms. Lisa simply turned and walked away, her boots clicking softly against the metal floor. Daniel followed. They didn't argue. They didn't beg. They didn't even look back. Back aboard the Earth vessel Horizon, a modest cruiser with faded paint and patched hull plates, the rest of the human team waited in silence. There were no shouts of outrage, no tears of despair, just quiet efficiency. Engineers began powering down non-essential systems. Navigators plotted jump coordinates to the outer rim, far beyond Concord jurisdiction. Medics packed supplies. Everyone moved with purpose, as if they'd been preparing for this moment their whole lives. Lisa stood at the viewport, watching the Council's massive orbital station shrink in the distance. "They think we'll crumble out there," she said softly. "They think silence means surrender." Daniel joined her, his reflection ghostly against the starfield. "Let them think that," he replied. "Silence isn't weakness. It's choice." Within hours, the Horizon transmitted a single message to all human outposts, colonies, and vessels across Concord space. The message contained no words, just a sequence of numbers, a countdown, and a symbol, a closed circle. Those who understood knew what it meant. Pack up, power down, disappear. Over the next 10 days, humanity vanished. On the mining colony of EO7, human workers shut down the fusion reactors, erased all logs, and boarded their shuttles without a word to their alien co-workers. At the research station orbiting Viridian III, scientists deleted petabytes of data, sealed the labs, and left behind only empty rooms and cold coffee cups. In the bustling trade hub of Kessel's Reach, human merchants closed their stalls, folded their awnings, and walked away, leaving behind shelves of unsold goods and unanswered questions. The Concord noticed almost immediately, but not in the way they expected. At first, they assumed humans were stalling, hiding, or plotting resistance. Patrol ships scanned the void for hidden fleets. Surveillance drones swept abandoned stations, but there was nothing. No distress calls. No final broadcasts. No dramatic last stand. Just absence. Councillor Vore addressed the chamber again, this time with a note of smug satisfaction. "Humanity has complied," he announced. "Their departure proves they understood the wisdom of our decision. Peace will now flourish, but peace did not flourish Within a week, the first anomalies appeared. The long-range comms network began dropping signals at random. Maintenance bots on several conquered freighters froze mid-task, their programming suddenly unreadable. A shipment of nutrient paste bound for the famine-stricken world of Relis spoiled inexplicably, later traced to a missing calibration step in the human-designed preservation algorithm. The conquered technicians scrambled to fix the issues, but the systems were layered with human logic, intuitive, adaptive, sometimes illogical by alien standards. Without the quiet human hands that had maintained them for decades, the machinery began to unravel. Still, the Council refused to acknowledge the connection. Coincidence, Vor insisted. Temporary instability. We will adapt. But adaptation was harder than they thought. Meanwhile, far beyond the edge of known space, the horizon drifted into a quiet nebula, its engines dark. Around it, dozens of other human ships gathered. Freighters, science vessels, colony transports, all running on minimal power, their lights dimmed, their signatures masked. No flags flew, no transponders broadcast. They existed in the void like ghosts. On the bridge of the horizon, Daniel reviewed star charts while Lisa monitored long-range sensors. They haven't sent anyone after us, she noted. They don't need to, Daniel said. They think we're gone for good, and when they realize we're not the problem but the solution. He looked up, meeting her gaze. Then they'll learn what silence really costs. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere in that endless dark, humanity waited. Not in anger, not in vengeance, but in stillness. They had left not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to walk away. And in that silence, the conquered would soon discover just how much they had taken for granted. For now, though, there was only quiet. No speeches, no threats, no goodbyes. Just the hum of life support and the slow turn of the ship as it drifted deeper into the unknown, carrying with it the last echoes of a species the galaxy had foolishly chosen to forget. Months passed, and the silence from humanity grew heavier with each passing day. At first, the Galactic Concord celebrated. Counselor Cale Vor gave speeches about a new era of order and predictability. Alien children were taught in schools that the human expulsion had saved the galaxy from chaos. But beneath the surface, things began to fall apart in ways no one had foreseen. It started small. A cargo freighter en route to the outer colonies lost navigation mid-jump. The ship's computer, built with human-designed routing logic, refused to accept alien override commands. It simply shut down, leaving the vessel stranded in dead space for 3 weeks until a rescue team arrived. Then came the food shortages. Human-engineered crop stabilizers, tiny microbes that kept alien soil fertile, stopped working. Without regular updates from human biolabs, the microbes mutated or died. Farms on 3 conquered worlds began producing bitter, inedible harvests. The medical crisis hit next. Hospitals across the conquered relied on diagnostic tools developed by human engineers. These tools used pattern recognition based on human intuition, something alien AIs couldn't replicate. When the software began glitching, misdiagnoses spiked. A minor respiratory infection on the planet Nyrex was labeled as a deadly plague, causing panic and unnecessary quarantines. On another world, a child's broken bone went untreated for days because the scanner kept reporting no anomaly. Council technicians worked around the clock, but every fix unraveled another problem. They tried rewriting code, replacing parts, even building new systems from scratch. But human technology wasn't just hardware and software. It was layered with subtle choices, emotional context, and creative leaps that didn't follow strict logic. Aliens valued precision, but humans built with flexibility. That flexibility had kept the Concorde running smoothly for decades, and now its absence showed in every broken system. Even entertainment suffered. Alien audiences had grown used to human-made stories, films, music, virtual dramas, that carried emotional depth unlike anything their own cultures produced. Without new human content, the networks recycled old shows until viewers grew bored. Riots broke out on 2 entertainment hubs when a popular human-written series was taken off air permanently. It felt real, one fan said through a translator. Now everything feels hollow. Counselor Vor dismissed these complaints as temporary growing pains. We are superior beings, he told his inner circle. We do not need primitive emotional noise to function, but the people disagreed. On the trade world of Helios Prime, merchants refused to accept conquered credits because the human-designed exchange algorithm once the backbone of fair pricing, had collapsed. Barter returned. Trust eroded. On the academic moon of Lyris, students staged protests demanding the return of human educators, whose teaching methods had sparked innovation across disciplines. Deep in uncharted space, humanity watched it all unfold, not through spies or hackers, but through the natural decay of systems they had once maintained. Aboard the Horizon, Daniel Carter reviewed sensor logs showing the slow unraveling of conquered infrastructure. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded. "They're starting to feel it," Lisa Monroe said, standing beside him. She held a datapad showing reports of failing power grids on 5 major worlds. "They built a house on sand," Daniel replied. "Now the tide's coming in." Far from the Conquered's view, human colonies thrived in hidden star systems. Engineers like Noah Briggs worked on new energy grids powered by clean fusion, designed to run without constant oversight. Biologists like Maya Ruiz cultivated crops that could grow in any soil, using seeds saved from Earth's last harvests. Artists painted. Musicians played. Children learned not just science and math, but poetry and empathy. Humanity wasn't hiding, they were rebuilding, not for war, but for life. Back in conquered space, desperation grew. The Varel, once strong supporters of the expulsion, sent a private message to the Council. Their entire agricultural network had collapsed. Millions faced starvation. "We need the human soil protocols," their ambassador pleaded. "We don't even know how they worked." Vor refused to respond. Pride still held him tight. Then came the blackout. It happened on Xylos, the capital world. One moment, the city lights blazed as usual. The next, everything went dark. Not just power, comms, transport, medical systems, even basic lighting in homes. The emergency backups failed because they relied on human-written failsafes that had expired without renewal. For 6 hours, the heart of the Conquered sat in total silence and darkness. Panic spread faster than any virus. People screamed in the streets. Hospitals lost patients. Data centers overheated. When power finally returned, it was patchy and unstable. The Council convened an emergency session, their faces pale under flickering lights. "We must find them," said the Orlan ambassador, their voice trembling. "We must bring them back." Vor stood, his posture rigid. "We do not beg," he snapped. "We adapt, but adaptation was failing." Every day brought new breakdowns. Ships refused to dock. Water purifiers spat out sludge. Even the Council's own voting system glitched during a routine session, locking delegates out for hours. Meanwhile, on a quiet asteroid base orbiting a nameless star, a small team of human engineers uploaded a silent patch to an old Conquered satellite. The patch didn't restore full function. It just stabilized one medical relay long enough to save a children's hospital on Relis. No message came with it, no signature. Just a quiet act of mercy hidden in the code. The Conquered technicians found the patch days later. They couldn't trace its origin. They didn't understand how it worked. But they knew one thing: it was human. For the first time, doubt crept into the Council chamber. Whispers spread. What if they'd been wrong? What if humanity wasn't the threat but the foundation? But no one dared say it aloud. Not yet. Out in the void, the horizon drifted near a blue-green planet untouched by alien hands. Daniel stood at the viewport again, watching clouds swirl over oceans. Lisa joined him, holding 2 cups of real coffee, grown from earth seeds in hydroponic gardens. "They'll come looking soon," she said. "Let them look," Daniel replied. "But this time, they'll have to listen." And in the silence between stars, humanity waited, not with weapons, not with anger, but with the quiet certainty that the galaxy would soon remember what it had lost. The unrest began on the fringe worlds where life had always been harder and patience thinner. The Varel were the first to speak openly against the Council's decision. Their farms lay barren, their children hungry, and their leaders humiliated. They had trusted the Conquered to provide solutions after the human expulsion, but no solutions came, only excuses. One morning, the Varel ambassador walked out of a council session without a word and never returned. That same day, their entire delegation broadcast a public address across every open channel. "Humanity fed us," the ambassador said, voice raw with emotion, not with pity but with partnership. "They taught our soil to breathe. Now it chokes. We were fools to let fear decide for us." The message spread like wildfire. Other minor species began to echo the sentiment. The Kasari, who relied on human-designed atmospheric processors to survive on their homeworld, announced they would no longer contribute ships to conquered patrols. The Marines suspended trade agreements, citing systemic instability caused by the loss of human technical oversight. Even the usually loyal Orlan sent a formal note of concern to the Council, warning that public trust was eroding faster than their crystal cities could be repaired. Councillor Kyle Vore tried to hold the line. He called emergency meetings, issued stern statements, and accused dissenters of emotional weakness, but his words rang hollow. The data didn't lie. Concord-wide efficiency had dropped by 32% since humanity's departure. Medical error rates had tripled. Food production was down across 12 systems, and worst of all, no one knew how to fix it. Then came the drones. The Concord had sent dozens of surveillance units toward the last known human coordinates, empty sectors near the Helix Nebula. Most returned with nothing. A few never came back at all. But one, damaged and barely functional, made it home. Its memory core was corrupted, but technicians managed to recover a single file. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a threat. It was a recording. They played it in the council chamber. The screen flickered to life, showing a simple image. A field of tall grass under a pale sun. Wind moved through the blades. Birds called in the distance. Rain began to fall soft and steady. For 3 seconds that was all, just Earth quiet and alive. Then the screen went black. No words. No demands, no face. Just sound and sky. The chamber fell utterly silent. Some delegates wept. Others stared in stunned disbelief. Councillor Vore stood rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. He wanted to call it a trick, a distraction. But even he felt something shift inside him. A memory of something lost. Something he hadn't realized mattered. That night, riots broke out on Xylos. Citizens gathered in the central plaza, holding up old human-made devices, music players, story projectors, medical patches, and demanded answers. "Where are they?" they chanted. "Bring them back." The council's security forces tried to disperse the crowd, but even the peacekeepers hesitated. Many of them had children who used human-designed learning tools. Many had parents saved by human medicine. They lowered their stun rods and stood aside. Panic began to bloom in the highest halls of power. The Conquered wasn't just losing systems, it was losing faith. Species that had sworn loyalty for centuries now questioned the Council's judgment. Trade routes froze as captains refused to fly without human-certified navigation logs. Hospitals turned patients away, fearing misdiagnosis. The very idea of unity, the foundation of the Conquered, was cracking. Deep in the hidden human enclave, Daniel Carter watched the unrest unfold through passive sensors. He didn't gloat. He didn't feel joy. He only felt sorrow, for the suffering, for the waste, for the arrogance that had brought them here. Lisa Monroe entered the command room holding a fresh report. "The Varel just declared they'll open their borders to any human ship that shows up," she said. "They're offering full sanctuary," Daniel nodded. "They're not the only ones." "No," she agreed. "But we're not going back just because they're scared." "We're not going back at all," Daniel said quietly. "Not until they understand why we left." Meanwhile, on a remote Conquered research outpost, a young alien scientist named Joran tried to repair a broken climate regulator. The manual was written in human script filled with notes like, "Trust your gut, and if it hums, it's happy." He didn't understand. His species didn't have guts like humans, and machines didn't hum with joy. Frustrated, he slammed his hand on the console, and the regulator whirred to life. He stared at it, confused. Then he laughed, a strange wet sound. For the first time, he wondered what it would be like to think like a human. Back on Xylos, Councillor Vore sat alone in his quarters. The city outside was dark again, another partial blackout. He held a small object in his hand, a human-made music chip his daughter had given him years ago. He'd never played it, thinking it primitive. Now, with trembling fingers, he inserted it into a reader. A soft piano melody filled the room. Simple, sad, beautiful. He didn't know the song, but it felt like a memory he'd never lived. Tears welled in his eyes. For the first time, he admitted the truth to himself. They hadn't expelled a threat. They'd banished a gift. The next morning, he called for a private session with the inner council. "We made a mistake," he said, voice low. "A grave one. but pride still held most of them back. "We cannot admit fault," argued the Thalax representative. "It would shatter our authority." "Authority without function is just noise," Vor shot back. Before they could debate further, an alert flashed across every screen in the chamber. All human-made systems across the Concord, every medical unit, every comms relay, every power grid that still carried human code, had just rebooted. Lights returned. Ships powered up. Data flowed smoothly again. It was as if nothing had ever gone wrong, but there was no message, no explanation, no signature, just silence. And in that silence, the Council finally understood. Humanity hadn't broken their systems. They'd merely stepped back. And with one quiet act, they'd shown they could fix everything or break it all again whenever they chose. Fear turned to awe. Arrogance turned to humility. And for the first time since the vote, the Council sat not as rulers but as students waiting to learn what they had refused to see. The Council's pride cracked like thin ice under too much weight. After the mysterious reboot of all human-linked systems, no one celebrated. There was no victory, only relief and a deep, gnawing dread. They knew now that humanity hadn't been defeated. They had simply chosen to stop holding the galaxy together, and that choice could be unmade at any moment. Councillor Kyle Vor called for an emergency session, but this time, his voice lacked its usual thunder. He stood before the chamber not as a leader, but as a man who had seen his own blindness. "We cannot pretend anymore," he said. "Humanity is not gone. They are watching, and they are waiting." The other delegates shifted in their seats. Some looked down. Others stared at the empty human chair as if expecting someone to appear. The Orlan ambassador finally spoke, their crystalline voice soft but firm. "We must find them. Not to demand. Not to command. To ask." A search party was approved, not armed, not aggressive, but humble. 3 small vessels painted white with no weapons, no Concord insignia, just a single symbol on their hulls. An open hand. They carried no soldiers, only diplomats, scientists, and one old human linguist who had studied Earth cultures before the expulsion. Their mission was simple: locate humanity and deliver a message of apology. They traveled for weeks, following faint energy trails and old jump coordinates. Most leads led to dead ends, abandoned stations, empty colonies, silent comms buoys. But then, near the edge of the Helix Nebula, their sensors picked up a signal. Not a broadcast, not a beacon, just a steady rhythmic pulse like a heartbeat. They followed it to a quiet star system with no name in Concord records. Orbiting a blue-green planet were dozens of human ships, all dark, all still. No weapons charged, no shields raised. Just ships floating like seeds waiting to fall. The lead envoy, a young Zenthari named Lyra, sent a standard hail. No response. She tried again, this time in basic human speech, her voice shaking slightly. "We come in peace. We seek only to speak." Minutes passed. Then a single light flickered on aboard the largest vessel, the Horizon. A docking bay opened, just enough for one shuttle. No words, just an invitation. Lyra boarded alone. Inside, the air smelled different. Clean, warm, with a hint of something green. She was met not by soldiers, but by a woman in a simple blue jumpsuit. "I'm Maya Ruiz," she said. "You can leave your recorder on. We have nothing to hide." Lyra followed her through quiet corridors. There were no guards, no alarms. Just people working, fixing engines, tending plants, teaching children. She saw a man laughing with a robot over a broken tool. She saw a group singing softly in a common room. Everything felt alive in a way Concord space hadn't felt in months. They reached a small room with a window overlooking the planet below. Daniel Carter and Lisa Monroe waited there. No titles, no uniforms, just 2 people who looked tired but calm. Lyra bowed her head. "We were wrong," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We thought you were chaos, but you were the balance." Daniel didn't smile. He didn't scold. He just nodded. "What do you want now?" "To ask you to come back," she said. "Not as subjects, not as tools. As equals." Lisa crossed her arms. "Why should we trust you? You voted to erase us." "Because we see now what silence costs," Lyra replied, "and we are willing to listen." They talked for hours. Not about treaties or trade, but about understanding. About why humans built systems that needed care, not just commands. Why their art made aliens feel things they couldn't name. Why their presence had been a quiet thread holding the galaxy together. When Lyra returned to her ship, she carried no agreement, only a seed, a small plant grown from Earth soil. "Take it home," Maya had said. "Plant it where your council meets. Water it every day. And remember that some things grow only in silence." Back on Xylos, the council gathered to hear her report. She spoke plainly, without embellishment. She showed them the seed. She played the recording of children laughing in the Horizon schoolroom. She told them about the man who fixed engines by listening to their hum. For the first time, the chamber was quiet, not from fear, but from awe. Counselor Vor stood slowly. "We will rescind the expulsion order," he announced. "We will open all borders. We will restore all human access codes, and we will send a message across every channel, begging them to return." The vote was not unanimous this time. One delegate abstained, but it passed. The message went out that night. Simple words broadcast on every frequency in every language. "We were wrong. Please come back." Days turned into weeks. No reply came. No ships appeared. No signals returned. The council waited, hearts heavy with doubt. Had they waited too long? Had humanity chosen to leave forever? Then one morning, a small freighter dropped out of warp near the edge of conquered space. It bore no weapons, no flags. Just a human pilot, Noah Briggs, and a biologist, Maya Ruiz, aboard. They docked at a neutral station on the border world of Kesar, the same place where human merchants had once sold seeds and songs. They carried crates of medical supplies, soil stabilizers, and open-source tech schematics, all free, all shared. When station officials asked why they had come, Maya looked out at the crowd of curious aliens and said, "We never left." "You just stopped listening." News spread fast. Within hours, ships from a dozen worlds arrived at Kesar, not to inspect, but to thank. They brought gifts, rare minerals, woven fabrics, songs of their own. They didn't ask for more. They just wanted to be near humanity again. On Xylos, Counselor Vor watched the live feed from Kesar. He saw Noah hand a child a small device that played Earth bird song. He saw Maya teach a Varel farmer how to mix soil with her bare hands. He saw no demands, no conditions, just quiet giving. He turned off the screen and walked to the council garden. There, in a small pot by the window, the earthseed had sprouted. 2 green leaves reached toward the light. He watered it gently, then sat beside it in silence, finally understanding what humanity had tried to teach them all along. The freighter stayed at Kesar Station for 17 days. In that time, it became a quiet hub of healing. Maya Ruiz worked side by side with alien doctors, showing them how to recalibrate old human medical units not with code, but with care. Noah Briggs walked the maintenance tunnels with young engineers from 5 different species, teaching them to listen to machines the way humans did, not as slaves to logic, but as partners in function. No contracts were signed. No oaths were sworn. Just hands working together, voices sharing knowledge, and the slow return of trust. Word spread faster than any signal could carry. Ships arrived daily, not warships or envoys, but ordinary vessels filled with ordinary people. A Thalak's grandmother brought hand-woven blankets for the human crew. A marine musician played soft melodies outside the freighter's airlock, hoping someone inside might hear. Children pressed their faces to viewports, pointing and whispering about the humans who had once vanished like stars blinking out. Back on Xylos, the council watched it all unfold with a mix of shame and hope. Counselor Kale Vor no longer held himself with the stiff pride of before. He walked the halls quietly, often stopping to speak with junior staff or visiting delegates. He carried the small potted plant everywhere, to meetings, to meals, even to sleep. Its leaves had grown taller, greener, fed by his daily attention. It was no longer just a symbol. It was a promise. One evening, he received a private message. Not from the freighter, but from the Horizon itself. The message contained no text, just a live feed from deep space. The camera showed Earth, not as it had been in war or ruin, but as it was now. Oceans clear, forests spreading, cities lit not by harsh neon, but by soft, warm light. People walked in parks. Boats sailed on calm seas. Children flew kites under open skies. The feed lasted exactly 3 minutes. Then it ended with a single line of text. "We are still here, and we remember you." Vor sat alone in his quarters long after the screen went dark. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just let the image settle in his bones, the quiet proof that humanity hadn't needed the Concorde to survive. They had chosen to leave not because they were broken, but because they were whole. On Kessar Station, Maya stood at the observation deck, watching a Varel child plant the first human seed in alien soil. The child's hands were careful, reverent. Nearby, Noah laughed as a group of young engineers finally got an old coolant pump to hum the way it was supposed to. The sound was rough, uneven, but alive. A station official approached Maya. "Will you stay?" he asked. She looked at him, then at the growing crowd of aliens who now gathered each day just to be near human presence. "We're not here to stay," she said. "We're here to remind you that we never really left." The official frowned. "But the council has rescinded the expulsion. They've opened all borders. They've even renamed the central plaza on Xylos Human Harmony Square." Maya smiled faintly. "Names don't fix what silence broke. Listening does." That night the freighter prepared to depart. No fanfare, no speeches, just a quiet farewell. As the ramp closed, Noah gave a small wave to the crowd below. Maya left behind a data chip filled with open-source designs for clean water filters, crop rotation plans and emotional wellness programs, tools, not weapons. The ship lifted off smoothly, its engines whispering rather than roaring. It didn't head back to hidden nebulae. Instead, it jumped to a nearby system where a medical colony was struggling with a new virus. There they would help again. Not as saviors. Not as rulers. Just as neighbors on Xylos, the council held a new session. This time the human chair was not empty. It held the potted plant, now placed at the center of the table. Vor stood and spoke not as a leader but as a student. "We spent centuries believing strength meant control," he said. "But humanity showed us that true strength is in stillness. In silence, in choosing to walk away and still leaving the door open." The chamber remained quiet after he finished, not out of fear but out of respect. From that day on, every council decision included one question: would this honor the silence they left behind? Years passed. Human ships began appearing more often, not in fleets but in ones and twos. They traded, taught, and sometimes just visited. They never asked for power. They never demanded recognition. They simply existed, and in doing so reminded the galaxy that connection was not about dominance but presence. Children across the conquered grew up learning human songs alongside their own. Hospitals ran on hybrid systems, alien precision guided by human intuition. Even the stars seemed brighter, as if the universe itself had exhaled in relief. And in the quiet corners of space, the horizon still drifted, its lights low, its mission unchanged. Daniel and Lisa watched new generations of humans grow up not in anger but in peace. They knew the Concord would stumble again. Arrogance would return. Fear would whisper. But now the galaxy had learned one truth they could never unlearn. Humanity's greatest power was never in what they said, but in what they chose not to. And in that silence, the stars listened.